Welcome to the Winterberry Wildlife Tech Series. Today we'll be taking an in-depth look at Browning's new Elite HP5 Ultra trail camera. We'll do a teardown to figure out what's new inside. We'll also go through many examples comparing the image quality of this new camera to the previous Elite HP5 trail camera. The bottom line is that the hardware on this camera has potential, but the firmware, even with a recent fix, is dragging it down. Let's start by taking the camera apart to see what's new inside. The HP5 Ultra uses the same physical packaging as the previous HP5 model and comes apart in the same way. Removing 6 Phillips head screws from the back of the case allows the case to come apart, separating the front half with a circuit board and LCD display and the back half, which contains the batteries. Right away we can see a major change. Browning has replaced the iCatch Tech V38 system on chip, or SoC, with a newer part. The part is labeled iCatch V55A and appears to be a variant of the V57 product line from iCatch Tech. Critically, this newer SoC can handle Quad HD video stream at 60 frames per second, which is exactly the new Ultra video quality in the HP5 Ultra. We can also see that the EEPROM is a new part. This is a 256 megabit part in a surface mount package surrounded by other tiny surface mount parts. Occasionally these double EEPROM parts fail over time. In earlier models it was possible to replace them, but due to the new packaging this will be much more difficult, if not impossible, for the HP5 Ultra. Now we can look at the camera sensor module. It's attached to the main board by a small flex cable. It comes out easily enough with 3 screws. The optical system looks to be identical to the HP5, including a wide-angle lens and a built-in IR filter with motor. I know from experience that exposing the sensor on the board by removing the lens will not help us one bit in determining its make and model. Instead, I unpacked the new firmware for this camera and fed the program binary into a software reverse engineering tool. Ghidra was able to find several strings featuring the text Sony IMX675. The IMX675 is a 5.1 megapixel image sensor from Sony featuring Starvis 2 low-light technology. It is in all ways an improvement over the Sony IMX327 used in the earlier HP5 models. So what does Browning do with all this great new hardware? Let's take a look. We'll start by comparing the HP5 Classic to the HP5 Ultra with its original firmware in bright sunlight and a landscape set. The HP5 Ultra with its original firmware pixelates the foliage on the foreground trees, making them look frosted and unnatural. At the same time, it washes out the background trees. The updated firmware helps a little. The pixelation on the foreground is gone. Unfortunately, the background is even more washed out than it was with the original firmware. Overall, the HP5 does a better job capturing the dynamic range in this scene. Now we'll look at a tighter set, taken in the same bright sunlight. The HP5 Ultra with its original firmware still pixelates the tree in the background on the right. The new firmware fixes the pixelation, and without that distraction we can see that the foreground image quality is slightly better than the HP5. Now we'll take a look at the same landscape scene taken at dusk under low light conditions. The exposure of the HP5 and HP5 Ultra are much more similar in this case, although the Ultra with its original firmware still pixelates the foreground trees. The new firmware for the Ultra fixes the pixelation once again, while still capturing more accurately the deeper green of the trees in the foreground and on the mountains. In the close-up set at low light, the story is much the same. The original HP5 Ultra firmware creates pixelation in the background, which is fixed with the new firmware. The resulting image quality is slightly better than the HP5. The nighttime image quality of the HP5 and HP5 Ultra is similar, as shown by video of these 2 different deer taken from the same place but at different times. In conclusion, in my opinion, the HP5 Ultra with its updated firmware does a slightly better job than the HP5 for nighttime and low-light daytime images, providing richer color. However, the Ultra does not do nearly as good a job as the HP5 in bright scenes with a lot of dynamic range, where it tends to wash out the background. The good news from my teardown is that the HP5 Ultra hardware is a clear improvement over the HP5. Hopefully, Browning will quickly release a more thorough firmware update that improves the auto exposure in brightly lit scenes. Until then, users like us seeking the best overall image quality may wish we had more of the older HP5s.